smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Great.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Striker. His name's Joe Pisapia, and this is the place if you want to dominate, whether it be season-long fantasy, DFS, straight-up wagering, whatever it is, we've got you covered. We're going to get into a lot of information, so really quickly, at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, those are our social media handles. Give us a follow. Keep the conversation going. Joe, we start with injury news because it opens up a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, we try to contain this to one segment, but to be honest, it could be 2 hours if we just wanted to do injury. This is baseball, folks, in 2024 and in the 2020s. We're in the 20s now, Matt. It's fun. The roaring 20s, roaring with injuries all the time, but not everything is negative. Some good things. Sonny Gray came back, looked good this week. That's a positive. We've got some guys working their way back from injury like Nathaniel Lowe with the oblique. He had a rehab assignment that started Friday. That's a good thing. Hopefully you'll get him back into this Texas lineup sooner than later. So that would be probably, my guess would be the middle of next week. I would think maybe Thursday. Look, you could get him on Tuesday, but probably Thursday or Fridays when you're looking at Lowe. The A's put Brent Rooker on the 10-day IL with the abdominal issue. So he will be unavailable for a while, but that is retroactive. So get him back sooner, but he has not hit it all so far this year. Justin Verlander. Well, he made his rehab start yesterday. It wasn't great. He gave up a fair amount of runs. I don't know if I'm really worried about this because it's Justin Verlander. He's been around the block more than once, so this could just be him getting in work and not really worrying about results. But I think when over the age of 40, you do always worry about results just a little bit more, just a little bit. So I would just be a little careful there. The value of Justin Verlander might be at its peak right now when it comes back. That's the one thing to keep in mind. He's a 40-year-old pitcher. He's being touted as the savior of the rotation. He's going to get the Astros back. He is still Justin Verlander, best version in everyone's mind. If for any reason you don't get the best version of Justin Verlander, he returns, again, that's something to really consider. Maybe this is his peak value, especially if you don't need Verlander right now. If you drafted him and stashed him on the IL and you haven't been the guy that had or gal that had, Spencer Strider or any of these other pitchers, Garrett Cole, or had all these issues, and you have a surplus, Justin Verlander could bring you back a pretty good return. So I would at least kick the tires on a trade because value is always at its peak when guys are returning. Brandon Lau was going to be out for a while here. Again, another oblique strain. So if you're a hitter, you have oblique strains. And Matt, if you're a pitcher, your UCL is damaged. That's just kind of the way Major League Baseball goes. But also the one that popped up and kind of smacked us all in the face is Bobby Miller, who underwent an MRI on the injured shoulder. No structural damage, so that's good, but they did put him on the IL. The last start was not good for Bobby Miller. The first start of the year was electric. It was great. We were all very excited. So once again, with the Dodgers, here we go. So Glasnow has been brilliant. We're waiting for Clayton Kershaw at some point in time. James Paxton is always a time bomb. Bobby Miller goes on the IL. That's a problem. Yamamoto has been, up and down. I think that's a fair assessment so far of him. What do you think of the Dodgers rotation right now in terms of what you're getting and in terms of what the expectations were?
Well, from a wagering standpoint, I'm seeing a lot of people have fun on social media with this whole Dodgers run line -1.5. And I understand the idea. But from the prospect of what this show is supposed to do, season-long fantasy, you're already there. You have your players. DFS, I would be staying away until you can figure out what is going on with this team. You do understand that the way to play this team is in the wagering realm. It's the way to play them is going to be in the totals. You have 4 guys on this team that you can play in a myriad of ways. I'm talking about Betts, Smith, Freeman, and that other guy, his name eludes me, Ohtani. That's how you have to look at it. But the pitching does scare me, but it makes it fun because what I'm hopeful will happen, Joe, is that the books will adjust their numbers. The public will start to adjust their expectations. It's still only April, but these Dodger numbers are really inflated and it impacts the entire market. So the more volatility in their pitching, I think the better it is for numbers to adjust the closer we move to, say, June, July.
Yeah, they're 11-6 right now to start the year. I mean, the Dodgers might just be too big to fail at the end of the day. That could be just true.
Yeah, that was a term used for Enron, and how right? How did that work
Yeah,
out?
it was. Look, the Diamondbacks are still going to be around. The Giants have gotten off to a sluggish start. The Padres, again, up and down. They're a game under 500 so far. It is only April, but the one thing we kept talking about is like the Dodger rotation. There's questions there, and so far it still is a lot of questions, I think, when you look at it. There have been some good things, though, certainly early on in Major League Baseball, some good stories here. One of the surprising ones, Matt, has got to be that the Oakland A's have more wins than the White Sox. I know the White Sox have had some injuries, but still 2 wins so far for the White Sox, 6 for the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
Mason Miller has been that guy. We talked about how do you keep Mason Miller healthy? You make him the closer. You give him clean innings. The A's aren't going to have a lot of 3 wins in a row, so you don't have to worry about using them like 3 nights back to back to back. So far it seems like that has worked out, and the A's have gotten some moments here. What's as a bigger surprise, that the A's have 6 wins or that the White Sox have 2?
Loaded question. Gosh, I don't know. I'm not surprised really about either, to be honest with you, because the way that you've been making money on the A's so early in the season is the in-game. Catching them on the in-game. And their numbers are always going to be good regardless, but once the in-game and they get down, their numbers are really, really, and that's what we're looking for in April. With regards to surprising, I have to say that it would be Oakland, because with Chicago, it just seems like if you put on that jersey, I don't like saying it, you become snake bitten. Look at these names that we're just not talking about anymore. Eli Jimenez, Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada. 5-6 years ago, they were on the tip of everyone's tongue. That's what shows you why you have to stay on shows like this and stay on guys like Joe, because everything's changing so quickly. If you blink and you miss something, you're wagering on a guy that isn't relevant anymore. The A's are relevant right now, and I like what they're doing.
The Yankees are 12-3 at the top of the standings. Juan Soto, I think it's safe to say he's been as advertised: 3 homers, 15 RBI. He's got 14 walks to 10 strikeouts. I mean, that's just something you don't see very often. That's something we're used to seeing back in the 90s sometimes with players who actually walked more than they struck out. What a concept. 458 OBP, 1,000 OPS. So far, it looks like a good trade from the Yankees' perspective, because Soto's been brilliant, and Michael King has really struggled with walks. Any concern with Michael King and all the walk totals? You think he gets right here? You think it's just a weird April for him? Because so far, King has been a guy that we were very excited about. I know I was. Him and Reagan's were going back-to-back in ADP. King has been a disappointment. Soto's been brilliant. Yankees are winning that trade, but what do you make of King's slow start?
Again, slow start. What would we be if we sat here and said, yeah, I'm really concerned. I think it's time to move on from Michael King, when we were waving the Michael King flag and we're telling everyone, patience. I'm not worried at all really about anything other than when you hear some of these things about what come out about Cole and Strider and things like that. But no, that's not worrying me at all.
I think my favorite Yankee performance has been Anthony Volpe, a player that we were really excited about going into this year too. 13 runs scored for him already. He's hitting 350, a 979 OPS. Great start for Anthony Volpe. He is going to be an all-star. Remember, we told you first. We come back here, we're going to talk about how to buy low and sell high on some big names in Major League Baseball when we return right after this break.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Jrue Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford, Father Time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate, whether it's season-long fantasy, DFS, wagering, whatever it is, we've got you covered. It's time now for buy low, sell high. And what I love about this is sometimes you'd be surprised how naive or how impatient certain managers can be. And you can snag yourself a fantastic trade. So let's start with the buy low. And the reason I set it up that way is because if I can find a way to swing a deal, and in most of my leagues, I have shares of this pitcher. It goes to show you everything you need to know. But if I can swing a deal for this next guy, Joe, you point me that way. What do you got in the first buy low candidate? It's a good one.
Well, we talked about buying low collectively in hour one on Seattle Mariners. And I think George Kirby is probably number 2 on the list, only behind Julio Rodriguez. Look, I know the last 2 starts for Kirby have not been good, but velocity's fine. Strike zone, he continues to be too much in the strike zone, which I just think is something we have to talk about here. First start of the year, 6 2/3 against Boston. He was fantastic. 2 hits, 8 Ks, 2 walks, brilliant. Start after that, 6 earned runs against Cleveland. Start after that against Toronto this past week, 5 earned runs. So here's the thing when it comes to Kirby, and I watched him pitch in this latest outing he had. He is just too much in the zone. He is just throwing too many strikes right now, which, again, is something we like when pitchers throw strikes. But the other thing he's not doing is he's not pushing anybody off the plate ever. He's never trying to command the strike zone in that sense. And it's kind of the lost art form of pitching. I'm not saying you're hitting guys, but you got to throw inside on guys. When everybody knows you're going to be around the strike zone, it makes you very hittable. And right now, it's made him very hittable. The occasional inside where you get the guy thinking a little bit too, or just in his head just a little bit more, goes a long way if you're George Kirby. And George Kirby just does not have that demeanor on the mound. It's something he's got to change a little bit and get back to if he is going to be successful in 2024. And I think he can. But watching him in his latest start here against the Toronto Blue Jays earlier this week, that's what I saw. And again, just the occasional inside fastball is going to go a long way for George Kirby, because when you're in the strike zone just as much as Kirby is, it's a little too much for these guys if they're comfortable in the box. And right now, everybody just looks too comfortable in the box with George Kirby. So I think it's an easy adjustment for him. It's not a velo issue. It's not a stuff issue, because you look at the strikeouts right now, 13 strikeouts in 14 innings. He's right where we want him to be. Just 2 walks. The controls, everything is there. If anything, he's just throwing too many strikes, which is something we don't say very often, but it's something he's got to tweak just a little bit. I think it's an easy fix. He's get the Reds in his next start. That's a start to keep an eye on because that's a team that's going to strike out a fair amount. I think you could turn things around. But if Kirby's available in your league right now, he might be the best buy low pitcher outside of maybe his teammate Luis Castillo. But Kirby is still one of the best in baseball, and I think Seattle is going to have a great season regardless of the sluggish start.
It's a dynamite assessment, and it goes to show that you can follow all the accounts, you can watch all the shows, but watching baseball, even if it's highlights, just take time to watch at-bats. There's enough out there, and Joe's 100% right. You're not going to get that assessment that Joe Pisapia just gave you on George Kirby anywhere else, from anywhere else like that, because of the fact that it's just a natural, organic reaction to watching baseball. Joe has a background, he writes a book, he played. And so that to me was a dynamite assessment. And before we get to this next guy, because it's part and parcel of the same conversation, can you think of, I'm a George Kirby manager, can you think of a trade that you would offer me if I'm ready to jettison Kirby that would seem fair?
That's an interesting piece. I think you're looking right now at some mid starters who are maybe pitching well above their expectations. I think Kirby took a lot of draft stock, so I think people are going to still be a little hesitant. So you've got to really challenge somebody. Yeah. Perhaps you look at like a Chris Bassett's been pretty good. I don't think that gets it done. You got to throw that out. Aaron Nola would be an interesting one. Again, you're kind of you're looking, was Kirby ranked ahead of Nola going into this year? Yes. Could you pull off that trade now? Probably. Like I would not trade Freddie Peralta for him because Peralta to me is in that same category. Remember when I said Freddie Peralta is a fantasy ace and he's going in the 5th round and nobody seems to care but me? Well, he's got 26 strikeouts in 17 innings so far. Right. But I think if you could possibly look at, taking up Brady Singer and somebody else, I don't think you want to make that school one. Here's one that sticks out. We just talked about it. Jared Jones. That might be the perfect guy because Jared Jones has been incredible. But what is August and September look like of Jared Jones? That's a big question, especially in head-to-head leagues with playoffs. That's a guy you trade Jared Jones. You put Jared Jones for George Kirby on the table for somebody. I think somebody has to sit there and go, do I want this kid who's been electric so far, and maybe he's the next George Kirby, or maybe he's the guy that is going to electrify baseball the rest of the season, or do I want George Kirby, the guy who did it last year already? I think I'd rather have Kirby, especially in that Seattle team. But I think that's the kind of name that might be the guy in the standard that could get a deal like that done. Somebody that really has pitched so well out of the gate that's been really tremendous. Maybe a Shoto Imanaga gets it done. That could be another name too, who's been very good, but I'd rather have Kirby, Imanaga, or Jared Jones. Those are 2 names maybe you could throw out.
Wow. That's great. And I'm glad that we had that conversation because we could spend time on this next guy or we can move on because this next guy, again, is going to be the same conversation is what are you possibly going to give me that's going to pry away Julio Rodriguez from my team when I know that he's a notoriously slow starter. So spend as much time as you like on Julio, and then if you want to get yourself to the next player, because this is a sell high candidate, and I think a conversation should be had.
Well, I mean, I think we know, but maybe not everybody knows, or maybe people new to fantasy. Here's his career numbers in April, folks. 216 batting average with a 612 OPS over 62 games. April, just for some reason, not his bag. I don't know what it is about April he doesn't like. First half, too, for his career. 262 batting average with a 766 OPS. Second half of the year, a 306 batting average and a 939 OPS. Julio did this last year. He did it the year before. Julio and April don't go well together. But the one thing you can count on is the other 5 months of the season are going to be elite. So it's not that you can just easily get him. It's just this is the only window in which he's going to be available. Right. So if you're going to make a trade offer for him, this is the time you have to do it. And you better make sure that it's a good offer. And it might be, a Pete Alonso, someone like that, that you could throw out there. That might get it done right now, straight up. Alonso's had a pretty good start to the year. He's got 6 homers, hitting for a decent average of 280. Maybe that's the guy that gets it done. Maybe a package of players if this team's had a lot of injuries. But Julio's window is April to buy him if you didn't get to draft him. And once we turn the page into May, that window is going to shut, and it's going to shut hard.
Okay, so let's open some windows here, some sell-high windows, because there are some players that, again, are taking advantage of just how impatient we've become as a society. So let's talk. Let's go to Kansas City. Anyone get your attention?
Yeah, MJ Melendez is interesting. He's gotten off to a great start so far. Again, part of the Royals, who have just been red hot. But the one thing to keep in mind is this is a guy that struck out a ton last year. Now, that strikeout rate hasn't been quite the same this year, but I do think it's going to rear its ugly head. I don't think Melendez has all of a sudden just completely changed his stripes. So Melendez is somebody that's played extremely well so far. Everything's broken right for him. But the bigger picture with Melendez is the higher strikeout rate that I think eventually is going to come around and he will struggle at some point. And then the other name is Garrett Crochet. I know yesterday Crochet gave up some runs, but he also had a lot of strikeouts. So a team that's desperate for pitching help, Crochet is a guy that you can offer. Crochet is a pitcher that does have strikeout ability. He's also going to have limitations. The limitations are going to be innings as we get into the All-Star break time. And the limitations are going to be he pitches for the White Sox. He's not going to have a lot of win potential. So sometimes the answers are easy. You picked up Crochet. He's given you some strikeouts. He's given you more than you could have asked for in April. That's great. Trade him now where his value is still high because the future is really questionable with Crochet for 2024. Not talking keeper, not talking dynasty, just talking redraft. When we return, we're going to continue to talk baseball here on the program. Some guys in the waiver wire should add to your rosters this week.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year. Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Drew Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
great, great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt and Joe with you here. We're having a good time as always. But the name of the game is making ourselves smarter, right? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. So if you want to dominate your season-long fantasy baseball, we've got you covered. There's also football coming right around the corner. And do you smell that? I smell that. I think a special guest is coming in a good way. We're going to have that in a couple of segments as well. So everything you need is here. It's time to look at the waiver wire. Because right now, I think with all the injuries at this point, this is a very important waiver wire segment, Joe. So let's not waste any more time. Let's start with a pitcher because that seems to be what's needed. What do you got?
Well, the first guy is Spencer Turnbull of the Philadelphia Phillies, who's been pretty good this year. I know Saturday, a little bit of a different start there for him, a little bit of a step back, you could say, gave up 3 runs and 4 hits, 4 walks, so a little bit more of the walks. But still, if you look at the overall picture for him, he is rostered in just about 60% of leagues. He's available in 40%. That's math, folks. 15 innings so far in the year. That's what that is. You take 100 and you subtract the number, and what you're left with, that's where he's available. 16 strikeouts, 5 walks for him still in the year, 0.93 whip, a 1.80 ERA. If anything, maybe this hiccup start or a start that was a little bit more mediocre might scare some people away, but it's not going to scare me away, and here's a couple of reasons why. The first is he pitches for the Phillies. The Phillies need him in this rotation right now. He is locked in this rotation. Spencer Turnbull had some moments when he pitched for the Tigers that were pretty solid. Again, he never pitched on a team as good as the Phillies. I think with an infrastructure as good as the Philadelphia Phillies have, with guys like Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola ahead of him where you can learn from and get better. And I think that's a very important thing here for a young pitcher. So it's a good environment for him to be successful. Run support, defense, pitching knowledge around him, veteran presence, all of that stuff. So Turnbull is in a lot of good spots here. He's also in a good spot because his next start comes against who? The White Sox. That's right. So I want to pick him up anyway this week and at least get that start, if nothing else. Because the White Sox have 2 wins. The White Sox are terrible. We're going to troll the White Sox. That's what's going on. I'm sorry, Southsiders. That's just going to be what Sunday show is about today.
They know.
It's okay. But this is a guy that I want to add. I think he can be useful in your rotation. He is going to be more of a matchup play. Okay. But on those 2 start weeks, on those good matchups like the one he's got coming up this week, I think Turnbull is a player that you want to add. And again, he's available in almost half of leagues. And that's kind of surprising. Now, after Saturday, I think maybe instead of adding him for $8, you could probably add him for 5 or 6. But depending on how desperate you are, don't be cheap. Because Turnbull, I don't think is going to go anywhere in this rotation. So he is first and foremost, I think, the pitcher I want to add the most this week.
All right, I like it. And I really like the point about the infrastructure, especially pitching ahead of a decent bullpen, if not a good bullpen, can really do wonders. So great analysis there on Turnbull. And when I get the chance, if he's available, I'm definitely going to stream that start because it's against who? The White Sox. All right, Colton Cower, and Joe and I were joking because I had run to pick up shares of Colton Cower. I'm just like, how is he available? But Joe, you're telling me that in a little over half of the leagues or a little less than half of leagues, Colton Cowser's still available?
Well, we put this together on Friday when it was 55%.
Right.
And then over the last 2 days, it's gone up now to 74%. So big jump there.
Whoa.
So he's still available in 25% of leagues. So if he's out there, go get him. Now, here's the interesting thing. As good as Cole Cowser has been, it's he's not going to hit 450 all year. I think that's the thing you have to understand. He's a nice player. He's talented, but he's not going to hit 450. So regression is coming at some point for him. And I think it's a very interesting thing that if you picked him up now and you have him, there's a lot of people that might have that, I wish I had picked up Cowser. And again, he plays third base, and that's a big thing right now. People, if you don't need Cowser, and the team in your league that has Royce Lewis desperately needs a third baseman, or the team that had Josh Young desperately needs a third baseman, his value might be extremely high. There's a scenario where you could put Cowser and something else and get back Royce Lewis, because people get frustrated with young players like Royce Lewis. They're like, oh, why can't he just stay healthy? And then they, lose their patience. The next thing you know, they make a bad decision. Be that team that helps somebody make a bad decision. Be that manager. Put it out there, because Cowser, as good as he is, he's not this good. So keep that in mind. And I'd rather have Royce Lewis rest of season than Colton Cowser. And I don't think that's controversial. Maybe somebody will disagree with me. That's okay. But It's a great start to the year. He's got a 1,500 OPS. Like, that's awesome. He's been terrific. It's going to come down. So if he's still available, add him. If you already added him, start to look at what you can get back for him, because, again, this cannot last. And somebody might overpay, and I think that's something worth recognizing. So as an asset right now, he is a really fascinating one, as Baltimore continues to be. This organization just keeps on hitting time after time. And I know the next guy we're going to talk about is another Baltimore Oriole.
Only on this show can a dashingly handsome bald man in his mid-40s remind me of my son, who is 4. My son is in this stage now where he goes around going, I have a sneaky, sneaky plan. And then he jumps all over me. And I think it's great. Joe, you just reminded me of it because it's a brilliant thing to do with Colton Cower. I have shares of Cower. It's exactly what I'm going to do. You make such a great point, because a lot of times we jump, we grab a player, we say, yeah, I got him. And then we're holding on. And in June, it's not the same thing. And I know it's an age-old adage, but kept mana will stink, and that will start to stink. I love it. I've got a sneaky, sneaky plan. Now I miss my son. Okay, let's go on to this next player. You alluded to it again. It's another Oriole. I'm shocked. Oh, my gosh, they have really, really good players, but only in 30% of leagues. So it looks like this next player could have a much bigger upside.
Yeah, look, he's a stash right now. He is crushing AAA. He's got 7 homers, Heston Kjerstad, 26 RBI. All right, 26 RBI. Now, I know they had some huge games where they beat up on a couple teams here, because this Orioles AAA roster looks like almost like a quad A team. Like, maybe they're better than the White Sox roster.
Could they beat the White Sox? What would be the odds that you would lay? Give me a money line.
I would say in a 3-game series, I'll take the AAA team, the Norfolk Tides. I think I would go that route.
Okay.
But
fair enough.
Kjerstad is a player that I've talked about quite a bit. He's hitting 386 right now, a 471 OBP, an 825 slugging, a 1295 OPS. He is a stash guy. Kjerstad eventually is going to show up. The comp that I have for him, again, when you're talking about the swing, if you can imagine a Will Clark with more power, that's what the swing kind of reminds me of back in the day. Nice. He's got that sort of very similar sort of smooth swing. He's got incredible power. He's a big, strong kid. He did struggle a little bit in the spring, but he's gotten red hot here. Last year, very good in AA, hit 310. So, look, he's at 68 plate appearances right now, somewhere around 100. I just don't know what else there is for this kid to prove. So get him up there. So before we get closer to that 100 number, just stash him now for $1 and just see what happens over the next, 4 weeks or so. And then you can reevaluate. Again, you have to have room to do this. But Heston Kjerstad is a guy that I want to have on my roster. If nothing else, he could be trade bait at some point. But in the best case scenario, he comes up and he rakes and is another big piece in this already incredible puzzle the Baltimore Orioles are putting together.
It's amazing. In this show, Joe has posited the sneaky notion of flipping Colton Cower, as well as a trade scenario where the Baltimore Orioles land Mike Trout. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not watching this show on the regular, you're missing something. But with everything good that Joe does, he'll always do one of these things. He'll always throw in the conversation. I promise he's going to say this. Well, he's hitting. Yeah, it's baseball. You're supposed to hit. I'm just teasing Joe, a huge Met fan. I, of course, am a Cardinal fan. Will always needle Joe. But you got a Met on this list on the waiver wire that could help some teams, especially at the position. What do you got?
The word I use is never a huge Mets fan. It's loser Mets fan. That's what I am.
Oh,
it's loser. Like, that's what we do. We lose. But Brett Batty right now is making good contact. Brett Batty was a player that was known for making good contact in the minor leagues, and finally looks like he's getting comfortable. Now, he's getting a lot of singles, but that's okay. I want hard hit rates. I want contact. I want him to be playing every day at third base. He's hitting 302 right now, and we're always desperate for batting average in a lot of leagues. And I mentioned earlier, right, you have deficits, teams that have Royce Lewis that is out for an extended period. Josh Young out for an extended period. So third base is a bit of a problem right now. That first week, we were kind of looking at guys like, oh, can we plug it with J.D. Davis? Can we plug it with some of these other guys that are, lower run guys? Brett Batty has more upside than that. Brett Batty has the ability, once upon a time, not that long ago, was a very desired prospect and piece. And right now on the year, it's been pretty good for him. He's got 6 runs scored. Again, where he hits in the batting order is going to have a fair amount of issue there. But look, he is just about 40% roster now. He's 24 years old. Can he give you another good couple weeks? I think he can. I'm not saying he's a guy I want all year, but as long as he keeps hitting for batting average, he's a player that I think you might want. But maybe the best option of the third base guys might be the guy in Chicago. It's Michael Busch, who qualifies at third base. He's rostered in roughly 50% of leagues. Michael Busch was a player we talked about on the show, Matt, in draft season.
Yes.
Like, hey, you're looking for some pop later on in your draft. Michael Busch is a player that you should be paying attention to. So far this year, 4 homers, 9 RBI. He's hitting .311 right now. He has power. He qualifies at first. He qualifies at third in a lot of leagues. Michael Busch was a big-time prospect in the Dodger organization. Now he's getting everyday at-bats here for the Cubs. I think he's going to be one of these underrated players where we step back and we look at what happened with the Cubs and we say, yeah, Michael Busch, that was a great acquisition by them. So Michael Busch, I would be more aggressive on than Brett Batty. He has way more to offer in terms of power. But what do you think when you're looking to try to fix the holes of third base that a lot of rosters have right now?
Well, outside of the fun that you can have with Bush's name, with just being parochial in all your regard, yeah, I'm with you 100%. There's definitely more upside with Busch. And I think that people need to, on this break, go out there and check your waiver wires, because when we come back, it's football talk, is it not? What do we have?
We've got the Furious Five, which has been a while. So Derek Brown's going to come in and talk about some guys that are flying up the NFL draft board and why that might be. It's going to help your fantasy, rookie, dynasty drafts and all of the above. So Matt's going to go let his son continue to have sneaky plans, and we're going to talk some football.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year. Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Drew Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Great.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. And of course, Fantasy Sports Today doesn't just mean baseball, it means football, because the NFL draft is just a few weeks away. Heck, even days away at this point, we can count. And we're all very excited for the guys that are moving up some of the draft boards, and who better to talk about that than, of course, my friend D-Bro, Derek Brown, the king of bros, the fantasy bro from Fantasy Pros. Derek Brown is back. The beard is back to talk about it. And D-Bro, look, we've been really excited. We've done a ton of mock draft shows together now in the last couple of weeks over at Fantasy Pros. We've been doing stuff with Thor Nystrom. You and he have been out there talking draft every single week on our Discord too. I have to imagine at this point, like, we're almost at the point where you just want the draft, right? Are we past the speculation point? We just want it to be here already.
I'm so ready. I'm past, and I hear people talk about prospect fatigue. I'm not to that point. Like, look, I'm just ready for the draft to get here so we can stop talking about all these hypotheticals and these trade scenarios and things that could happen. I want to see it, man. I want to see it happen. That's just the point I'm at this.
I never get Derek Brown fatigue. That's the one thing I never get. Like, no matter what. And you've tried. I mean, we work together.
I try weekly, actually. Yeah.
Sometimes daily, one might say, too. But let's get to the Furious Five. Let's talk about the guys that are moving up the draft board. And look, we know the first three quarterbacks seem to be locked in. We, can speculate and flip-flop the order of 2 and 3. But there's another quarterback, too, that's really went from the second-round grade to all of a sudden the first-round grade to all of a sudden now we've got to move up to take it. It's J.J. McCarthy of the Michigan Wolverines. And look, JJ certainly did a lot to help his stock, national championship, lots of positivity coming from his head coach, really, pumping him up there. Harbaugh has had nothing but great things to say about McCarthy. We keep every time having the Vikings continue to move up to take him. They keep moving up further and further, first with the Chargers, and the last mock we did, they are moving up with the Arizona Cardinals to leave no doubt that they're going to be the team. So why is J.J. McCarthy getting this meteoric rise in the last month and a half?
I mean, to be honest, Joe, Thor Nystrom and myself on the Fantasy Pros NFL Draft Show, we've been there. Like, we've been there since February. So I think everybody else is still trying to catch up to the JJ hype and the JJ rise. But to be honest, man, I've looked at him as a top 10, top 12 prospect this entire process, and people want to point back to the raw counting stats, but it's not that, and that's not why he's getting the hype. People have a problem with, okay, well, Michigan didn't pass very much, and he wasn't asked to do these things. They were winning in so many fourth quarters where he wasn't even playing, and it's like you have a run-heavy coach, and they're beating the pants off of everybody. They're just smacking every single team they play. You think they're going to throw the ball a ton in the fourth quarter? No. But if we look at the efficiency side, Joey, this is a quarterback who is top 10 in basically everything I care about. Top 10 in PFF passing grade, top 10 in adjusted completion rate last year, top 12 in 11th, actually, in yards per attempt. So people can hate it. You can run from it. But the reality is J.J. McCarthy has always been a top 10 prospect for this class.
So let's say that McCarthy ends up with Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that do to Justin Jefferson? Because I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about. Is it going to be Sam Darnold? It would feel like if you're moving up and you're moving the draft capital to draft J.J. McCarthy if you're the Vikings, then J.J. McCarthy is going to be the starter. Is that how you see it as well? And what's that impact look like early on with a rookie quarterback? It's one thing that Kirk Cousins, a veteran. What does it look like for Jefferson with somebody who is kind of learning the league on the fly?
I think it'd be just fine, man. I'll be drafting Justin Jefferson as a top 5, top 6 player in every format, and it won't matter to me. And we could see a little bit of Sam Darnold at the beginning of the season if they do draft JJ, which is the move that I think happens. I do think that Arizona or the Chargers trade back. I think Minnesota comes up. They have the equity and the firepower to do so. And with that type of move, I'm totally fine with Justin Jefferson, and I think JJ is going to play really well. And what we saw last year, Joey,
Like we saw, and no shade to Josh Dobbs or to Nick Mullins, but we can easily say, okay, they're lesser talents than J.J. McCarthy, and I understand that, okay, well, he's a rookie coming in, but a top 10 drafted rookie in the first round. The kid is talented for days. We saw Justin Jefferson produce with lesser quarterbacks last year, so with J.J. under center, whenever that happens, totally fine with it. Not worried about Jefferson at all.
All right, so the league is really adjusted and running backs. We're not going to see any night one. Hopefully we'll see some night two, I guess. We'll see. I don't know. Now, Jonathan Brooks obviously is the guy, returning from the ACL injury that a lot of people are excited about from Texas. But you've got another running back that you're excited about who's moving up your board, and his name is Marshon Lloyd from USC. What is it about Lloyd that you've seen in the tape that has you excited about his draft stock?
Well, it's not just me, Joey. There are multiple teams, at least if you're looking out there in the rumor bin, there are multiple NFL teams that have Lloyd as their RB1 of this class, and I'm with them. He's been my RB1. It remains my RB1, and it depends on whatever part or piece you want to pick off of Marshon Lloyd. You want to talk about his efficiency metrics. He's top 20 in yards after contact per attempt, breakaway run rate, and PFF elusive rating in each of the last 2 seasons. You want to talk about the tape. The guy is a violent runner, tone-setting back. You want to talk about 3-down skill set. Okay, I went down to Mobile. I saw him close 2 consecutive practices with awesome pass game reps where he's dusting linebackers on wheel routes and angle routes. So what are we talking about? He can break tackles. He is a hard worker. I got to interview him as well in Mobile. Awesome kid. Awesome. And not only all of that, he's got a 3-down skill set. So I think he easily could be, and if you're out there looking at the props right now, he's plus 800 to possibly go as the first RB off the board in the NFL draft. I've already bet that over on Betting Pros, so follow me there. But look, Lloyd should be talked about in this top 3 phylum, and again, he's my RB1 of the class.
It's a little early to be dropping the big vocab like phylum. I mean, geez, I have to go...
Trying to wake people up out there, Joey.
That's a lot. Phylum. I don't know how to spell that possibly, but certainly a lot of good news coming out there from Marshon Lloyd. I'm very excited about him as well. It's a very wide receiver heavy draft, so let's get into some of those guys too. Ricky Pearsall is the first one you have on your list from Florida. Last year at Florida, 4 touchdowns, 965 yards on 65 catches. So what have you seen with Pearsall that has you excited, and where do you think he might land where you can get the most out of him?
Ricky Pearsall is a player that I wasn't as high on him until I went back to the All-22, watched all of his film, and really dug my heels in, man. But he is impressive, and he's getting a lot of hype. I think he goes to the top end of the second round. So I'm staring at you, Carolina Panthers, who need an explosive wide receiver. If they don't go with another guy that we're going to talk about here that could go in the similar ilk of the draft capital as Ricky Pearsall, if they don't go that direction, Ricky Pearsall should be at the top of their boards because he's a guy that can play inside, outside. He can stretch the field if you want him to. That's not really his major game. Where he will help Bryce Young or any other quarterback going in the top part of the second round is he's a separator. He's strong at the catch point. If you want to just go pull up his highlight reel tape, it is stuff that is literally, you could put any one of those clips on ESPN and say, hey, guess what? Here's top 12. Top 12 every single week on SportsGrid, on ESPN, on all these different platforms, and he should make the cut. There is a catch versus Charlotte where you're like, oh, a human body's not supposed to turn and move like that. Like that defies laws of physics, right? Like that didn't happen. It is up there with the Odell Beckham catch of yesteryear.
So what would be the best landing spot for him? Like, I mean, we always wanted to be with a good quarterback. We know a lot of teams are looking for wide receivers. For Pearsall, is there a spot here on, day 2 where you think maybe he sneaks in there? And could he be, looking around the league right now, like I said, there's a lot of teams that are kind of looking around for wide receivers, and it is a very deep draft. He's going to go after some of the other names we're talking about next. But where do you think would be like, if you had to pick one spot for Pearsall, this would be it?
I think if you're seeing, and you're going to love this take, Joey. I'm going to go home for you. I'm going to pull out the homer inside of you with this one. If the New England Patriots take their quarterback at the top of the draft, hell, even if they decide to trade back and stuff, and they want to address the rest of this roster, and they don't go wide receiver in round 1 either, Ricky Pearsall at the top of the second round at 34th overall would be fantastic. He would be
their rookie quarterback or Jacoby Brissett's best friend starting in week 1. And we're talking about a wide receiver that could go in the second round. And by week 5 of the NFL season, we're talking about him as moving his way to the top of the depth chart in very short order.
We are not trading back this year. I have already signed a petition. It is not going to happen. We're going to take a quarterback. We're going to move the franchise
I'm sorry.
forward.
That's called professional
Get away from
gaslighting,
the Mac
okay?
Jones,
Sorry.
Cam Newton stuff. It's just so easy because it happens so often.
It
All right,
happens.
let's get to
I mean,
another wide
it's
receiver.
easy to make the joke.
Well, the fastest guy at the combine in speed kills, Xavier Worthy, is certainly that, the Texas wide receiver who had a 1,000-yard receiving season at Texas last year, 75 catches, 5 tutties. An impressive combine for him, that's for sure. Now, we know at the end of the first round, we've done a couple of these mocks together, you and I, where he's landed with the Kansas City Chiefs at the very end. Now with the Rashee Rice situation being in flux, is he really the guy maybe the Chiefs are looking at, or is Worthy going to be passed on to maybe round 2 to someone else?
I think he's in that bucket of wide receivers that could go anywhere in the late 20s to the top of the second round. I think that we probably should be talking about him as probably a first-round lock, just based alone on what he did at the Combine. And then I'm looking at you, Kansas City. I'm staring at you, Buffalo. And I don't even think we can rule out Detroit, although he would be a little bit more of a duplication of talents, considering they already have Jamison Williams and the ability to stretch the field. But going to one of those other teams, or heck, I'll even throw a wild card out here, Joey. What if San Francisco does, because we've heard about like them possibly offering Deebo Samuel to other teams. What if they move on from Deebo and they take Worthy at the end of the first round? I mean, I'm not ruling any of this out. So as a player that I think where we are talking about him going in the 20s is probably his landing spot. Now, which team we want to talk about him going to is totally up for debate, but Kansas City would be at the top of my list. I would not rule out San Francisco, and I wouldn't rule out Buffalo either.
Another guy who's going up a lot of draft boards, Ladd McConkey, wide receiver of Georgia. Another guy, too, that I think you really like the tape, a guy that, breaks tackles, plays hard. This is the guy that I think maybe the Patriots do end up with at the end of the day in this beginning of the second round. But what are your thoughts on Ladd McConkey, and why is he moving up your board?
He's moving up everybody's boards, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's the guy that sneaks into the first round. If Worthy goes higher than what we're projecting, Ladd McConkey could get in the first round, and I don't think it's crazy. You saw him blow off the cover of the Combine. He tested fantastically in basically everything we can look at. You look at, okay, we're going to go back to the tape. Okay, he wasn't fully healthy last year. When he was on the field, he was 8th in yards per route run. The kid can play. He's coming from a huge program in Georgia, and all that kind of plays up. If you can make it in the SEC, Joey, you can make it in the NFL.
That's right. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Real quick, Adonai Mitchell or our friend Xavier Worthy, who do you think is going to be the better NFL prospect?
Worthy. Easy Worthy. Hands down Worthy with a bullet.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Why? Real quick.
He is an underrated route runner. You add the deep speed as well on top of all the things we saw at the Combine. His route running and his ability to separate and uncover early is going to sit here and cash his paychecks over Adonai Mitchell.
There you go. Furious 5 moving up the draft boards for NFL. Derek Brown, D-Bro, the king of bros for a reason. Great to see you. Next week, we'll be back with Derek Brown talking some more NFL drafts, so don't miss that. Same time next Sunday, so don't miss that. We come back, the 3 and Out. What to watch for this week of baseball, I'll tell you right after this.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year. Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
There's going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Drew Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Great.
Great stuff there from Derek Brown. Next week, he'll be back with more NFL draft preview stuff. We'll talk about some of the big fantasy pieces that are going to be going off early in round 1 and maybe some of his favorite bets as well. Maybe we can get some of those locked in. That'll be a good time for all of you. And of course, Matt Striker and I will be back talking baseball same time next Sunday. Don't worry. There's still plenty of baseball around, but NFL draft is a special time of year. As Derek Brown said, it's like Christmas for us football fans. I know everyone's going to be excited about it. All you dynasty players are going to be excited about it. All you folks who are wagering are going to be excited about it. And I'll be excited about it with you. So we're all going to have some good time in the next few weeks with the NFL draft. And of course, don't forget, right here on the network, we'll be covering it live here on Thursday and Friday as well. So let's talk about the 3 and out, the things to watch for this week in fantasy. Let's start with the Verlander progress. Wasn't great this weekend. The rehab start wasn't the great results. I guess the biggest result we should be concerned with is health. And so far, that seems pretty good. So, cautious optimism, perhaps the best way to put it, with Justin Verlander. Mike Trout, hot start is going. Hopefully it continues. Mike Trout has been absolutely spectacular this year, and I know the Angels are about a 500 team. That's great. But I don't think the Angels are a contender at the end of the day. So, Mike Trout, we shall see if this hot start continues. But again, like Verlander, it's the big H word. It's health with a capital H. That's what we need from Mike Trout. If he gives us 150 games this year, he's going to give us MVP caliber numbers. No, he's not going to steal bases anymore. That ship has sailed, but he is still one of the best hitters in baseball, and he's reminding everybody, I just want to see Mike Trout in the playoffs. Is that too much to ask, folks? Can I just see Mike Trout in the playoffs, please? I'd also like to see him on the East Coast so I could stay up and actually watch him because I'm old now and I fall asleep. But that's a story for another time. The Seattle Mariners. Talk about West Coast. It's a collective buy low on the Mariners. George Kirby, we gave you all the reasons to buy on him. Julio Rodriguez, we gave you all the stats of why every single April is misery and the rest of the 5 months of the baseball season are just absolutely spectacular for Julio Rodriguez. So This is your window to buy on Mariners, Polanco, Rodriguez, Castillo, Kirby. Buy them all and thank me later. Great show as always. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Matt Striker, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time.